The air on the parade ground at Forward Operating Base Sentinel was thick with dust and ceremony. It tasted of diesel fumes and baked earth, a flavor Major Catherine Kate Morgan had long ago accepted as a condition of her work. She stood in the third rank motionless, her small frame a study in stillness amidst the fidgeting of younger soldiers. Her Navy working uniform crisp and utilitarian was a dark blue island in a sea of desert camouflage. She was an anomaly and she knew it. Major General Lawrence Bennett stood at the podium, his voice a gravelly boom amplified by speakers that crackled in the dry heat. He was a man carved from a recruiting poster, all jawline and confidence, a four-star general who believed victory was a matter of volume and firepower. His speech was a predictable tapestry of valor, sacrifice, and the indomitable American spirit. Kate listened to the cadence, not the words. She analyzed it like a signal. Predictable modulation, high amplitude, low information density. Finally, the awards portion began. Names were called, citations read. Soldiers marched forward, received their medals with proud smiles, shook the general's hand for the waiting cameras, and returned to their places. Then the announcer called her name. Major Catherine Morgan. She moved with an economy of motion that was often mistaken for hesitation. She walked to the center mark, halted, and executed a precise salute. General Bennett looked down at her, a flicker of something, confusion perhaps, disdain, in his eyes. He took the citation from his aide. Major Morgan, he began, his voice losing some of its booming warmth, is awarded the Bronze Star Medal for meritorious service for providing critical signals, intelligence support during Operation Cobra Strike, leading to the successful neutralization of a high-value enemy network. The language was sterile, bureaucratic. It was the only language cleared to describe what she did. It spoke of support and intelligence, words that to a man like Bennett sounded passive, secondary. He looked from the paper to her, then to the assembled task force in the embedded media pool. He saw a narrative opportunity. He put the citation down. In my day, he began, his voice adopting a folksy, condescending tone. Support meant you were miles from the wire, safe and sound. It meant you were pushing paper while real soldiers were pushing the fight. A few of his acolytes chuckled. Kate's expression remained unchanged. Her eyes, dark and steady, were fixed on the middle distance as protocol dictated. This operation was won by trigger pullers, Bennett declared, his voice rising, by the infantrymen who kicked in the doors, by the men whose boots were on the ground. He picked up the velvet box containing her medal. He opened it, looked at the bronze star glinting within, and then snapped it shut. The air went still. The low hum of the base generator seemed to fall silent. We reserve these for the warriors at the tip of the spear, Bennett said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial growl for the cameras. He unpinned the medal from its cushion inside the box and, in a gesture of profound public contempt, slipped it into the breast pocket of his own uniform. We'll find a more appropriate recipient for this, someone who was actually in the fight. He looked directly at Kate, a smug challenge in his eyes, expecting a reaction, a protest, tears, anger, anything to validate his dominance. He received nothing. Major Morgan held her salute for one more perfect second. Then she dropped it cleanly, performed a flawless about-face, and walked off the parade ground. She did not look back. The sound of her footsteps on the gravel was the only noise in a suddenly vast and uncomfortable silence. The cameras kept rolling, capturing the rigid line of her back as she disappeared into the haze. Colonel James Westbrook found her an hour later at the base's small firing range. At 67, his face was a roadmap of decades spent in America's shadow wars. From the frigid mountains of Cold War Europe to the scorching sands of Desert Storm, Westbrook had survived by understanding two things: signals and people. Right now, both were telling him trouble was brewing. Kate was methodically field stripping an M4 carbine. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, each component laid out in perfect order on the cleaning mat before her. "That was quite a show, Major," Westbrook said, leaning against the weathered wooden post of the rain shelter. Kate didn't look up. "Not my show, sir." Westbrook unscrewed his canteen, a battered metal relic from another era, and offered it to her. Bourbon, Kentucky's finest. Medicinal purposes only, of course. A ghost of a smile crossed Kate's face as she accepted it. "Of course, sir. Field medicine." She took a measured sip and handed it back. The liquid burned pleasantly warming paths through the cold anger that had settled in her chest. Bennett's an asshole, Westbrook said bluntly, but he's a dangerous asshole. You've made an enemy today. I didn't make anything today, Kate replied. I just stood there. Exactly, Westbrook nodded. That's what terrified him. He expected tears outraged something he could use. Instead, you gave him nothing. Nothing scares men like Bennett more than someone they can't manipulate. Kate reassembled the rifle with swift, certain movements. The familiar click and snap of components locking together was its own form of therapy. I remember the first day I met you at MIT. Westbrook continued, his voice softening with the memory. 22 years old, brilliant beyond words. The NSA recruiters were falling over themselves to get to you. But there was something else, a stillness, like you were listening to frequencies no one else could hear. Kate chambered around and sighted down the range. My father taught me that silence is its own frequency. It carries information too. Her finger caressed the trigger, not quite applying pressure. Your father was a wise man. Air Force intelligence, wasn't he, before the cancer took him? Reconnaissance SR-71 program. He flew over places that didn't exist on any map, photographing things that weren't supposed to be there. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle barked once. Downrange, the center of the target disappeared. Westbrook nodded appreciatively. Bennett doesn't know, does he, about your other qualifications? Kate lowered the rifle. My file says Signals Intelligence Specialist. That's all he needs to know. Westbrook reached into his jacket and withdrew a small box. I brought you something. Call it an old man's paranoia. Okahuinse was a Breitling Emergency 2 watch, matte black tactical, with none of the flash normally associated with the brand. 121.5 MHz emergency transmitter. Global reach, military and civilian bands. If you activate it, I'll hear it regardless of where you are or where I am. Kate studied him. You're expecting trouble. It wasn't a question. Let's just say I've seen patterns like this before. During Desert Storm, intelligence leaks, operations compromised. We never found the source. She strapped the watch to her wrist, noting its perfect weight and balance. History repeats, Westbrook said quietly. The first time as tragedy, the second time as farce. Kate finished the quote. Westbrook smiled. Marx would have made one hell of an intelligence officer. Back in the sterile confines of her temporary quarters, a windowless containerized housing unit she shared with a bank of humming servers, Kate did not rage. She did not weep. She sat at her small steel desk and powered on her hardened laptop. The machine booted without a sound, its screen glowing in the dim light. She accessed the secure network and downloaded the official video feed from the ceremony. Her fingers moved with practiced speed across the keyboard, executing commands. She isolated the relevant segment from the moment her name was called to the moment she exited the frame. She saved the high-definition clip to a triple encrypted solid-state drive. She then cross-referenced the media roster for the event, noting the names and affiliations of every journalist present. Associated Press, Reuters, Fox News, the New York Times, all witnesses. She opened a new file, a simple text document that served as her personal log. The cursor blinked on the empty screen. Date June 17th. Time 14:37 Zulu. Location FOB Sentinel Parade Ground. Incident Public Awards Ceremony. Presiding Officer Major General L. Bennett, USA. Event recipient of Bronze Star Medal. Citation for Operation Cobra Strike. General Bennett publicly questioned the validity of the award, citing a distinction between combat and support roles. He retained the physical medal. Official video and media witnesses documented the event. Action taken. Withdrew from ceremony, filed this log. She saved the file. The entire process took less than 10 minutes. There was no emotion in the words, only facts. The facts were sufficient. The system she served was built on process and documentation. An emotional outburst was noise easily dismissed. A documented procedural breach was a signal clear and persistent. It could be ignored for a time, but it would remain in the logs waiting. With the report filed, she felt a familiar need for pressure and silence. She changed into a plain black swimsuit and walked across the base to the combat diver training facility. It was a deep, cylindrical pool housed in a cavernous metal building. The water a cold, chlorinated blue. It was usually empty at this time of day. She stood at the edge, regulating her breath. In, hold, out. The air in the building was heavy with the scent of ozone and chlorine. She executed a simple feet-first entry, slicing into the water with minimal splash. The cold was a welcome shock, a sensory reset. She sank to the bottom 20 feet down and settled in a cross-legged position on the smooth concrete floor. The world above vanished. The harsh sunlight, the dust, the noise of the base, all of it was replaced by a deep, resonant silence, broken only by the sound of her own controlled breathing as she began a breath-hold drill. The pressure of the water was a uniform, comforting weight on her entire body. Here there were no politics, no egos, no grandstanding generals. There were only the laws of physics, buoyancy, pressure, and the body's demand for oxygen. She was not a support person. She was a weapon system whose primary components were pattern recognition and an absolute mastery of the electromagnetic spectrum. General Bennett saw a small woman who worked with computers. He could not comprehend a battlefield measured in hertz and decibels, where a victory could be won by isolating a single packet timing anomaly in a terabyte of meaningless static. He could not imagine a fight that took place in the invisible space between antennas. His failure of imagination was not her problem. It was, however, now a documented fact. She surfaced, her lungs burning, her mind clear. She repeated the descent, the ritual of pressure and release, washing away the last vestiges of the public humiliation. It was not an insult to her. It was a flaw in the general's understanding of modern warfare, and flaws in her world were liabilities to be corrected. That evening, she spent an hour cleaning her rifle. It was not the standard issue M4 carbine. It was a specialized 338 Lapua Magnum, a tool for conversations held across a mile of intervening air. The weapon was a masterpiece of precision engineering, and she maintained it with a reverence some people reserve for prayer. She disassembled it on a clean mat, each component laid out in perfect order. She cleaned every surface, removing microscopic grains of dust with a soft cloth and a drop of oil. The smell of hops number 9 was incense. The precise mechanical clicks as she reassembled the weapon were a calming mantra. This too was a system governed by physics. Muzzle velocity, ballistic coefficient, spin, drift, the Coriolis effect. There was no ego in a ballistics table. There was only truth. As she worked, her mind processed the day's events. Bennett's public display of contempt was not simply about her medal. There was something else there, a desperation perhaps, a need to assert control. Men like Bennett saw the world in hierarchies. In his mind, the infantry stood at the top, the door kickers, the trigger pullers. Electronic warfare specialists, signals, intelligence officers. They were support, subordinate, lesser. It was an outdated view, but a common one among officers of his generation. They had risen through the ranks in an era when physical courage and direct combat were the primary metrics of military value. But Kate suspected there was more to it than generational bias. Bennett's reaction had been too extreme, too calculated. He had been performing not just for the cameras, but for someone else. She filed this observation away with the others, another data point in a growing pattern. The provocation when it came was as clumsy and predictable as Bennett's ceremony speech. It happened 2 days later in the main dining facility. The cavernous room buzzed with the clatter of trays and the murmur of hundreds of conversations. Kate sat alone at a small table in the corner, eating methodically, her focus on the field manual she was reading. 2 Army captains, fresh-faced and radiating the unearned confidence of their rank, approached her table. They were from General Bennett's personal staff. She recognized them from the ceremony. The taller one, whose name tag read Reynolds, smirked down at her. "Well, if it isn't Major Almost Got a Medal," he said, his voice loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. His companion, a shorter, broader man named Hunter, snickered. Kate did not look up from her book. She slowly turned a page. Reynolds' smirk tightened. Her lack of reaction was an irritant. "What's the matter, Major Cat? Got your tongue? Or are you just busy writing a strongly worded email about how your feelings were hurt?" "Leave her alone, Captain," a voice grumbled from a nearby table. It was a Marine gunnery sergeant, his face a roadmap of hard deployments. Kate recognized him as Ramirez, a scout sniper instructor she had worked with on a joint training range years ago. Reynolds shot him a venomous look. "Mind your business, Gunny," This is an officer to enlisted conversation. He turned back to Kate, his arrogance inflated by the minor challenge. The general was right, you know. They hand out medals like candy these days. Dilutes the meaning for the real fighters. Kate carefully placed her fork on her tray. She closed her book, marking her page. She still had not made eye contact with them. She prepared to stand and leave. Avoidance was the primary de-escalation tactic. Reynolds misinterpreting her silence as weakness and her movement as flight decided to escalate. He reached out and placed a heavy, condescending hand on her shoulder, intending to stop her from rising. "Hey, I'm not done talking to you, sailor." It was a tactical error of catastrophic proportions. The instant his fingers made contact, Kate's entire posture shifted. She did not tense up. She seemed to flow. Her center of gravity dropped by inches. Her left hand came up not to strike but to gently cover his hand on her shoulder, her thumb pressing a precise point on the radial nerve at his wrist. Simultaneously, her body pivoted, not away from him, but into him, using his own forward momentum against him. Reynolds's forward push became an uncontrolled stumble. Kate's other hand secured his elbow. It was not a punch or a grab. It was a simple, fluid redirection. His arm was now locked bent at an angle evolution had never intended. His own body weight creating the strain. His confident smirk vanished, replaced by a mask of wide-eyed shock and sudden blinding pain. He was completely off balance, his 6-foot frame held powerless by a woman half his size, all without a single blow being thrown. The entire sequence from contact to control had taken less than 2 seconds. The clatter in the dining facility died. Trays stopped moving. Conversations halted. Every eye was locked on the silent drama unfolding in the corner. Kate applied a whisper of additional pressure to the joint lock. Reynolds let out a strangled gasp. She leaned in, her voice low and devoid of all emotion. It was not a threat. It was a statement of fact. "Do not touch me again." She released him as smoothly as she had taken control. Captain Reynolds staggered back, clutching his arm, his face a mixture of agony and utter humiliation. His partner Hunter stood frozen, his mouth half open. Kate calmly picked up her book. She picked up her tray. She looked at neither of them. She walked to the tray return window, deposited her dishes, and exited the dining facility without a backward glance. The room remained silent for a long moment. Then a low murmur started spreading like a ripple. In the corner, Gunnery Sergeant Ramirez slowly shook his head, a look of grim, profound respect on his weathered face. He had seen her shoot on the range printing sub-Moai groups at 1,500 meters in a crosswind. He had always known she was more than she appeared. Now everyone else in the room knew it too. The narrative had begun to shift. Commander Thomas Garrison, Kate's nominal commanding officer in this joint task force assignment, rubbed his temples. The video was playing on a loop on his monitor. It was clear, undeniable, and a massive procedural headache. An Army captain, a general's aide no less, had been publicly and efficiently dismantled by one of his master chiefs. "I have to file a report, Major," he said, looking at Kate, who stood at parade rest in front of his desk. Her expression was placid, unreadable. "Captain Reynolds has filed a formal complaint. Assault." "I understand, Commander," she said. Her voice was calm. "He claims you attacked him without provocation." "That is an inaccurate statement," she replied. "I know it is," Garrison said, gesturing at the screen. "I have eyes, but I have to follow procedure. I need your official statement." Kate produced a small gray data chip from her pocket and placed it on his desk. "My statement is on this drive, sir. It is a text file, time-stamped and digitally signed." Garrison picked it up, curious. "And what else is on here?" "The unedited source footage from the 3 dining facility security cameras covering the incident, synchronized into a single timeline. Audio recordings from 4 personal devices in the immediate vicinity, which I was able to isolate and enhance. Their metadata confirms they were actively recording. A topographical map of the dining facility indicating the positions of all parties and at least 15 witnesses, rank and names included. And a frame-by-frame analysis of the physical contact demonstrating that Captain Reynolds initiated and that my response utilized minimal force necessary to neutralize a perceived physical threat consistent with established rules of engagement for personal defense." Garrison stared at the data chip in his hand. It was not a statement. It was a complete evidentiary package assembled with the speed and ruthless efficiency of a counterintelligence operation. He was a decent officer, a man who believed in the system, but this level of preparation was something else entirely. He was beginning to understand that Major Catherine Morgan did not simply exist within the system. She operated it like a finely tuned instrument. "All right, Major," he said, a new note of respect in his voice. "I will attach this to my report and forward it up the chain. You are confined to quarters, pending review." "Understood, Commander," she said. She saluted, turned, and left his office. Garrison watched her go. He plugged the drive into his computer. Everything she had described was there, perfectly organized. He read her statement. It was 3 sentences long, as precise and unadorned as a schematic. "At 18:05, Zulu Captain Reynolds and Captain Hunter approached my table. Captain Reynolds made unsolicited verbal contact. He then initiated unsolicited physical contact. I responded with a standard joint control maneuver to ensure my safety and disengage. I then vacated the area." He attached the entire package to his report and sent it up the chain of command. It landed, as he knew it would, on the desk of Vice Admiral William Harrison, the overall theater commander. The inquiry was convened not in a dusty office, but in the sterile high-tech Strategic Operations Center aboard the aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan, floating in the Arabian Sea. Vice Admiral Harrison presided, his presence filling the room with a quiet, pragmatic authority. General Bennett was there, flanked by his 2 aides, Reynolds and Hunter. Bennett's face was a thundercloud. Being summoned by a Navy admiral to discuss the conduct of his staff was a deep insult to his ego. Commander Garrison was present, and so was Major Morgan. She stood alone, a small, still figure in the center of the room. A large holographic map of the theater of operations floated in the air between them, currently inert. "Let's be brief," Admiral Harrison began, his voice calm but edged with steel. "General, your aide, Captain Reynolds, has filed a complaint of assault against Major Morgan. Captain, please state your case." Reynolds, his arm in a completely unnecessary sling for dramatic effect, recounted his version of events. He painted himself as the victim, claiming he had merely tried to have a friendly word with the Major when she suddenly and viciously attacked him. Harrison listened patiently. When Reynolds was finished, the Admiral nodded to a technician. "Play the dining facility footage, all angles." The holographic display flickered to life, showing the incident from 3 different perspectives simultaneously. The audio was crisp and clear. Reynolds' mocking words, his aggressive posture, his hand grabbing Morgan's shoulder. It was all there, undeniable. Then the swift, economical, and perfectly controlled defensive maneuver. The video played. The room was silent. Reynolds' face turned a deep shade of crimson. "The video seems to contradict your statement, Captain," Harrison said mildly. "It appears you initiated physical contact." Major Morgan's response appears to be a textbook application of non-lethal force. The complaint is dismissed. General Bennett started to speak, outrage coloring his features. "Admiral, this is an affront to my—" Harrison held up a hand, and Bennett fell silent. "We are not finished, General. This incident did not occur in a vacuum. It stems from your actions at the awards ceremony 2 days prior." He turned his gaze to Kate. "Major, I have read the citation for your Bronze Star. It is vague. For the record, I would like you to clarify your specific contribution to Operation Cobra Strike." This was the moment Kate stepped forward. "Permission to use the tactical display, Admiral." "Granted." Kate interfaced with a holographic projector via a datapad. The map of the operational area zoomed in on a dense urban sector. The objective of Cobra Strike was the leader of the Al-Fajr insurgent cell, a man known as the Ghost. He was notoriously difficult to track. His cell practiced extreme electronic emissions control. A complex web of colored lines and symbols flooded the hologram. "This is the electromagnetic spectrum of the target area for the 72 hours preceding the operation," she explained. Her voice was steady, the voice of a lecturer. "It is saturated with civilian traffic, military communications, and background noise. The enemy used a polymorphic, frequency-hopping communication system with encrypted burst transmissions designed to be indistinguishable from this noise." She manipulated the display. Most of the colored lines vanished, leaving a shimmering haze of what looked like digital static. Standard analysis could find no pattern. The signals were designed to mimic random atmospheric phenomena. "However," she continued, "no system is perfect. Every piece of hardware has a unique physical signature, a flaw in a crystal oscillator, a microsecond delay in a power amplifier. These create a recurring error, a digital fingerprint buried layers deep in the signal. Her fingers flew across the datapad. A single thread of light, impossibly faint, began to resolve within the static. It pulsed with a steady rhythmic beat. I designed a polymorphic decryption algorithm, but not for the content of the messages. It was designed to analyze the carrier wave itself, searching for this repeating hardware latency, a digital heartbeat. It took my system 48 hours to isolate it. The thread of light on the map solidified, leading to a single building in a crowded city block. I cross-referenced the signal's origin with thermal imaging from an RQ-170 Sentinel drone, which I had redirected to the area. The building showed a heat signature consistent with multiple occupants and a significant amount of electronic equipment in a sub-level. I passed this specific location, the single address, to the task force command at 0241 Zulu. The assault force led by Major Davies was dispatched to that location. They met resistance, neutralized the targets, and captured the Ghost. They were sent to the objective based solely on the intelligence I provided. She finished, and the holographic display froze on the single building, the faint heartbeat still pulsing. The room was utterly silent. She had not raised her voice. She had presented no opinions. She had simply displayed the raw, unassailable data. She hadn't supported the raid. She had been its architect. She had pointed a finger through the digital fog and told the trigger pullers precisely where to go. General Bennett was pale. His entire narrative of heroic infantrymen finding the enemy through sheer grit had just been vaporized by a quiet woman and her ghost-like signals. He had built his reputation on being a muddy-boots general, and he had just been shown in front of an admiral that he was strategically illiterate in the modern age. Admiral Harrison looked at Bennett. "General," he said, his voice cold as the deep sea, "your after-action report, which I have right here, credits aggressive patrolling by Alpha Company for locating the target. That is not just an error. That is a fabrication. You have misrepresented a tactical operation to your superiors and to the public. You have also publicly humiliated a decorated senior officer and illegally confiscated her award." The Admiral's gaze was unwavering. "This inquiry is concluded. My report to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs will reflect these findings. For a 4-star general, this was a death sentence. His career was over." The next morning, the entire task force was assembled on the parade ground once more. The air was different. The heat and dust were the same, but the mood was somber, attentive. There was no media present. This was not for them. Admiral Harrison stood at the podium. General Bennett was conspicuously absent. In any large organization, errors can be made. The Admiral began, his voice carrying across the silent ranks. Good organizations have the integrity to identify those errors and the courage to correct them. We are here today to correct an error. He called her name. Major Catherine Morgan. She walked forward, the same economical movements, the same perfect stillness. She halted before the Admiral and saluted. Admiral Harrison held the Bronze Star Medal. It was the same one from 2 days before. He had made a point of retrieving it from General Bennett's possession personally. He did not read the citation again. Instead, he looked directly at Kate. "Major, on behalf of the United States Armed Forces, I apologize," he said, his voice clear and firm. "Your skill and your dedication saved American lives and ensured the success of a critical mission. We are honored by your service." He leaned forward and carefully pinned the medal to her uniform just above her service ribbons. He then stepped back and rendered a slow, deliberate salute. For a moment, he held it alone. Then from the front rank, a single Marine, Gunnery Sergeant Ramirez, snapped his own hand up in a salute of razor-sharp precision. The sound of it seemed to break a spell. A wave of motion followed as every single soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine on that parade ground, thousands of them, raised their hands in salute to the small, quiet woman standing before them. It was a thunderous, silent roar of respect. That evening, the mess hall was unusually subdued. Word of what had happened in the Admiral's inquiry had spread through the base with the speed of light. The details grew with each retelling. By sundown, the story was that Major Morgan had written an algorithm that could read enemy communications through concrete walls and then personally led the assault team to capture the Ghost. Kate sat alone, as was her custom, but this time the solitude was different. It was not imposed by isolation, but granted out of respect. The buffer of empty seats around her was not a quarantine, but a perimeter of honor. Ramirez approached her table tray in hand. He stood waiting. "Permission to join you, ma'am," Kate nodded once. The Marine sat moving with the deliberate precision of a man accustomed to stillness. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice low. "I should have stepped in sooner with those officers. You had no obligation to intervene, Gunny. Maybe not an obligation, but a duty." He looked at her with frank admiration. "That was the cleanest takedown I've seen outside of force recon training." "Where'd you learn that?" Kate took a sip of her water. "Different places." Ramirez nodded, understanding the evasion for what it was. He knew better than to press. In their world, there were things you didn't discuss training, you didn't acknowledge receiving. "I heard about the ghost, that you found him by tracking some kind of electronic signature." Kate studied him. In anyone else, it might have been fishing for classified information. But there was a genuine professional curiosity in Ramirez's tone, a fellow craftsman's interest in technique. "Everything has a signature, Gunny. People, equipment. Even the absence of a signal is a signature in itself." Ramirez nodded thoughtfully. "Like how a sniper's hide disturbs the natural pattern of the terrain. Even when you can't see the shooter, you can spot the wrongness in the environment." "Exactly," Kate said. "The principle is the same, just in a different spectrum." They ate in companionable silence for a moment. Then Ramirez spoke again. "What happens to Bennett?" "That depends on how much more they find." Something in her tone made Ramirez look up sharply. "You think there's more?" Kate's eyes met his. In that moment, without saying a word, she communicated volumes. Ramirez was a combat veteran, a man who had survived multiple tours by recognizing danger before it announced itself. He saw it now in her gaze. Not a suspicion, but a certainty. "There's always more," she said quietly. After dinner, Kate returned to her quarters. She sealed the door and activated a small device attached to her laptop. A custom-built electronic countermeasure that created a bubble of white noise, defeating any potential listening devices. She opened a secured connection to a server that officially did not exist. The triple encrypted link took 30 seconds to establish. When it did, Colonel Westbrook's face appeared on the screen. "I hear you've been making waves," he said without preamble. "Not my intention." "Never is. Doesn't change the results." Westbrook shifted the low light of his own secure facility, casting deep shadows across his weathered face. "Harrison's report is already circulating at the highest levels. Bennett's been recalled to the Pentagon. His career is over." "Good. Maybe, maybe not. Depends on what he does with his remaining time. Cornered animals are dangerous, Kate." She nodded. "I'm aware. Is that why you called?" "Partly." Westbrook hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "Project Trident has been activated." Kate's expression didn't change, but her posture straightened almost imperceptibly. Project Trident was the code name for a counterintelligence operation that had been in standby mode for years. A contingency plan to investigate possible infiltration of senior military leadership. "You think Bennett is compromised?" "I think there's a pattern. Operation Desert Storm 2003. 4 critical missions compromised in 6 weeks. Fast forward to 2010 Afghanistan. 3 intelligence-driven operations blown. Each time the leak originated from command level. And now, 5 operations in the last 4 months, including, I suspect, the original plan for Cobra Strike." Kate's mind was already racing ahead. Bennett altered the target coordinates for the assault team. By a quarter mile. If the team hadn't encountered unexpected resistance and requested clarification, they would have hit an empty building. While the actual target escaped, Kate finished. "Exactly, your signal intercept saved the mission. But it wasn't supposed to succeed, Kate. Someone wanted the ghost to remain free." "Why?" Westbrook's lined face was grim. "That's what we need to find out. And who? Bennett may be just a pawn." "Where do I start?" "With this." Westbrook sent a file through their secure connection. It contained a series of signal intercepts, encrypted communications that had originated from FOB Sentinel during the past 6 months. "These are military-grade encryptions," Kate noted, scanning the data. "Yes, using our own protocols against us. I need you to crack them." Kate was already analyzing the pattern. "This will take time. You have 48 hours. After that, Bennett's replacement arrives. And if our suspicions are correct, the enemy will go dark." After the call ended, Kate immersed herself in the data. The communications use a sophisticated variant of the military's SINGAR's frequency hopping protocol, but with modifications that made it nearly undetectable to standard monitoring. Nearly but not completely. She opened her custom signal analysis toolkit, software she had developed over years combining elements of quantum computing theory with traditional cryptographic approaches. The interface was sparse utilitarian. No flashy graphics, just raw data flowing in elegant patterns. Hours passed. The base grew quiet as midnight came and went. Kate remained focused, her mind locked in the abstract realm of mathematical possibilities and signal patterns. At 3:27 hours, her system pinged. It had isolated a repeating sequence buried deep in the encryption. Not the content of the messages, but a signature in the transmission method itself. It wasn't Bennett. The signal originated from a different source within the base, someone with access to the communication center but not directly associated with Bennett's command staff. She traced the pattern, following it through the digital labyrinth like a predator tracking a scent. The signature led to a terminal in the Joint Operations Center used primarily during the planning phase of major missions. She cross-referenced the terminal's usage logs against personnel assignments. A name emerged: Lieutenant Colonel Victor Harmon, liaison officer between Army Special Forces and the multinational coalition. Kate had never met him, but his reputation preceded him. 20 years in service, multiple combat deployments, a chest full of decorations. On paper, an exemplary officer. She dug deeper, pulling his service record, financial history, personal connections. Nothing suspicious stood out, which itself was suspicious. His record was too clean, too perfectly crafted. It felt curated like a cover identity. She sent a single word to Westbrook's secure channel. Harmon. The reply came instantly: investigate but do not engage. Reinforcements coming. By dawn, Kate had compiled a dossier on Harmon's activities. The lieutenant colonel had been present for the planning of all 5 compromise operations. He had access to the intelligence, the operational timelines, and the communication channels necessary to transmit that information externally. But there was no direct evidence, no smoking gun that would stand up in a military court. She needed more. At breakfast, she observed Harmon from across the mess hall. He was a nondescript man of middle years with the bland good looks of a career officer, someone who could blend into any military gathering without drawing attention. He ate alone methodically while reviewing documents on a tablet. Nothing in his demeanor suggested a man engaged in treason. But then the best never did. Kate formulated a plan. She would need access to Harmon's personal communications, which meant access to his quarters. And for that, she would need help. She found Ramirez at the firing range, instructing a group of young Marines in the finer points of wind calculation. She waited until the class broke for lunch. "Gunny, I need to speak with you privately." They walked to a quiet corner of the base away from prying ears. Kate laid out a carefully edited version of her suspicions, enough to gain his help without compromising operational security. "You think this Harmon is selling us out?" Ramirez's face was a mask of controlled fury. Like all combat veterans, he reserved a special hatred for those who betrayed their own. "I think he's involved, but I need proof." "What do you need from me?" "A diversion, something that will draw security personnel away from the officers' quarters for about 20 minutes. Ramirez considered this, then nodded slowly. "I can arrange a small fire in one of the supply buildings. Nothing dangerous, but enough smoke to trigger alarms. Timing is critical. 200 hours tonight." "You'll have your window, ma'am." Ramirez hesitated. "But with respect, this is way above my pay grade. Shouldn't intelligence or CID be handling this?" Kate met his gaze. "Who do you think I'm working for, Gunny?" Understanding dawned on his face. "You're not just signals intelligence, are you? Let's just say my training covered a diverse curriculum." At precisely 2200 hours, alarms blared across the eastern section of the base. Security personnel and the fire response team rushed to contain what appeared to be a serious blaze in a non-essential storage facility. Kate, dressed in the anonymous utility uniform of a maintenance technician, moved with purpose toward the officers' quarters. The guards who would normally monitor access had been pulled to assist with the emergency. She accessed Harmon's quarters using an electronic skeleton key, a device that shouldn't exist outside of specialized intelligence units. Inside, she moved with practiced efficiency, sweeping for surveillance devices first, then beginning her search. Harmon's quarters were spartanly furnished, almost obsessively neat. No personal photos, no mementos, nothing that would suggest a life outside the military. It was the room of a man who either had no attachments or who deliberately avoided displaying them. She located his personal laptop, but it was secured with biometric locks she couldn't bypass without specialized equipment. Instead, she installed a microscopic monitoring device in the hinge, a near-invisible tap that would record keystroke patterns and screen contents when the computer was in use. In his desk drawer, she found what appeared to be a standard military-issue encrypted phone, but her trained eye noticed subtle modifications to the casing. She photographed it from multiple angles without touching it. As she prepared to leave, she heard voices outside. One of them was Harmon's. He had returned unexpectedly early. Kate melted into the shadows behind the door, controlling her breathing, becoming part of the darkness itself. It was a skill she had learned in another life in training courses that left no records. The door opened. Harmon entered, accompanied by Captain Reynolds, the same officer Kate had humiliated in the dining facility. They were mid-conversation. "Shouldn't be meeting like this," Reynolds was saying. "Not after what happened." "We don't have a choice," Harmon replied. "Then it's finished. We need to accelerate the timeline." "What about the woman Morgan?" "She's a problem. Intelligence thinks she might be Chimera." Kate's pulse quickened. Chimera was a classified program, a joint NSA/Naval Special Warfare Initiative that trained a handful of operators in both advanced signals intelligence and direct action capabilities. Its existence was known to only a select few within the military hierarchy. "What the hell is Chimera?" Reynolds asked. "Need to know," Harmon said curtly. "And you don't. Just understand this. If she is what I think she is, we're already compromised." "So what do we do?" "We complete the transfer tonight. After that, it doesn't matter what she suspects. We'll be gone in the evidence with us. And the package, already en route to the rendezvous. Our friends are paying premium for this one." They moved toward the bathroom, their voices becoming muffled. Kate seized the opportunity, slipping out of the quarters and into the corridor. She moved casually toward the exit, just another anonymous support staff member completing routine maintenance. Once clear, she transmitted an encrypted burst message to Westbrook. "Confirmation, Harmon and Reynolds involved. Transfer tonight, location unknown. Package en route." The response was immediate. "Containment team inbound. ETA 3 hours. Monitor but do not engage." Kate returned to her quarters and prepared. From a hidden compartment in her footlocker, she retrieved items that Major Morgan signals intelligence specialists should not possess: a compact pistol with suppressor, a set of ceramic throwing knives, a tactical communications set independent of the base's systems. She changed into black tactical clothing. No insignia, no identifying markers. Just before heading out, she checked the Breitling watch Westbrook had given her. The emergency beacon was armed but inactive, a last resort. She moved through the base like a ghost, using the service corridors and maintenance tunnels that existed in the blueprint but were rarely traveled. Her destination was the communications center, where she could monitor all outgoing transmissions. The night shift at the comm center was minimal, just 2 sleepy technicians monitoring routine traffic. From her observation post in the ventilation service area above them, Kate connected a passive signal interceptor to the main array. Within minutes, she detected it, a burst transmission on a frequency just outside the normal military bands. Short, encrypted, almost impossible to detect without knowing exactly what to look for. She traced the transmission to its source, a portable communications set in the motor pool area. Someone was using the cover of routine vehicle maintenance to send unauthorized messages. She recalibrated her equipment to capture the next transmission. When it came 20 minutes later, she was ready. The encryption was sophisticated, but her custom decoder began working immediately, unraveling the complex algorithms layer by layer. The partial decryption revealed coordinates, a location approximately 10 kilometers outside the base perimeter. A rendezvous point. Another transmission followed shortly after: package secured, extraction at 0100. Kate checked her watch. 23:47 hours. The containment team was still at least an hour out. Too late to stop whatever was happening. She made her decision. Contacting Ramirez on a secure channel, she requested his presence at the east perimeter with a vehicle, no questions asked. He was waiting when she arrived behind the wheel of a nondescript Humvee, his face a mask of professional focus. Where are we going? 10 clicks east. Possible hostile. Contact. Bring your rifle. Ramirez nodded, revealing a sniper's case already loaded in the back seat. Figured it might be that kind of party. They drove in silence through the wire, using Kate's command authorization to clear the checkpoint. Once beyond the perimeter, they cut lights and went cross-country using night vision to navigate the rugged terrain. As they approached the coordinates, Kate signaled for Ramirez to halt. They proceeded on foot, moving silently across the rocky ground. The rendezvous point was a small plateau overlooking a dry riverbed. Perfect visibility in all directions, defensible with multiple escape routes. A professional's choice. Kate signaled Ramirez to establish an overwatch position with his rifle while she moved closer to observe. Through her thermal optics, she detected 4 heat signatures already at the location, 3 human-sized plus a smaller signature that could be equipment. She activated her directional microphone, focusing on the group. Transfer completed, a voice she recognized as Harmon said. The drive contains everything. Operational plans, force deployments, IFF codes, the complete package. Our employer will be pleased, another voice responded, unfamiliar with the faintest trace of an accent she couldn't place. The payment has been made as agreed. There's been a complication, Harmon continued. A signals intelligence officer named Morgan. She's asking questions, looking into the Cobra Strike operation. Is she a threat? Potentially, she may be part of a specialized program. Then she should be eliminated. Agreed. Reynolds is arranging an accident, a tragic malfunction during a training exercise. Kate's blood ran cold. Reynolds, the same officer she had humiliated, now planning her murder. She keyed her comm unit. Gunny, you hearing this? Every word, ma'am. Ramirez's voice was tight with controlled rage. I have visual on all 3. Harmon, Reynolds, and an unknown. Range 800 meters. Wind 5 knots from the southwest. I have a clean shot on all targets. Hold position. Containment team is inbound. She checked her watch again. The team was still at least 30 minutes out. Too long. There's a 4th signature, she informed Ramirez. Small, possibly the data package. Priority is recovering that intact. The conversation below continued. Our transport arrives in 15 minutes, the unknown man said. Once we're airborne, your involvement is concluded. The final payment will be transferred as agreed. In our extraction, Harmon asked, a new identity awaits you in Dubai. From there, you're on your own. Reynolds spoke for the first time. What about Bennett? He's under investigation. If they break him, Bennett knows nothing that can compromise us. He was a useful tool, nothing more. Your operational security was impeccable. Kate's mind raced. The containment team wouldn't arrive in time. If Harmon and Reynolds escaped with the unidentified man, the intelligence breach would be catastrophic. American forces and operations throughout the region would be compromised. Decision time. Gunny, I'm moving in. Cover me. If anything happens, your priority is the package, likely a hard drive or similar device. Recover and extract no matter what. Roger that. Ramirez's voice was steady, professional. I've got you covered, ma'am. Kate moved silently down the slope, using the terrain for concealment. Her approach was textbook. Invisible, methodical, closing the distance without alerting her targets. At 50 meters, she could see them clearly without optics. Harmon and Reynolds stood facing a third man, Middle Eastern in appearance, expensively dressed in civilian clothes. On a small, collapsible table between them sat a ruggedized case, presumably containing the stolen data. She keyed her comm once more. Execute on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. The night exploded into action. Kate rose from her position, pistol extended in a 2-handed grip. Federal agent hands where I can see them. Simultaneously, the distinctive crack of Ramirez's rifle split the air. A precise shot struck the ground directly between the 3 men, a warning so perfectly placed it could only come from a master sniper. The civilian reacted first, drawing a concealed weapon with practiced speed. Kate's response was instantaneous. 2 shots center mass. The man crumpled. Harmon lunged for the case, but Kate was already moving. She closed the distance in 3 fluid strides, executing a takedown that drove Harmon face first into the rocky ground. Reynolds, panicking, attempted to flee. Ramirez's second shot kicked up dirt directly in his path, stopping him cold. That was a warning, Kate called out. The next one goes through your knee, your choice. Reynolds raised his hand slowly. Within moments, Kate had both men zip-tied and secured. The civilian was alive but unconscious, his wound non-lethal by design. The case containing the intelligence was intact. She verified its contents. Multiple hard drives containing what appeared to be a complete download of classified operational data. The breach was even worse than she had feared. Containment team, this is Chimera Actual. She transmitted on a secured frequency. 3 suspects detained, an intelligence package recovered intact. Request immediate extraction at my coordinates. The reply came from Westbrook himself. Containment team is 10 minutes out. Well done, Chimera. Secondary sweep of the base is underway. We've identified 2 more conspirators in the communications section. Ramirez approached his rifle, held casually but ready. He surveyed the scene with a professional's eye. Federal agent, huh? Kate gave him a rare smile. Seemed simpler than explaining. Ramirez nodded toward the captive officers. Traitors. Never thought I'd see the day. Money, ideology, coercion, or ego. Kate recited the classic motivations for betrayal. Usually money in the end. What happens now? They disappear into a system even darker than the one we work in. The intelligence community doesn't take kindly to those who betray their country. The distant sound of helicopter rotors approached from the direction of the base. The containment team arriving. Ramirez looked at Kate with newfound respect and perhaps a touch of wariness. Who are you really? Kate considered the question. The answer was classified well above Ramirez's clearance level, but he had earned something. I'm someone who ensures the shadows remain secure, she said finally, so that soldiers like you can fight in the light. He nodded slowly, understanding what wasn't being said. Some questions weren't meant to be answered fully. The helicopter landed, disgorging a team of men in unmarked tactical gear. They moved with the coordinated precision of longtime operators securing the area and the prisoners with swift efficiency. Colonel Westbrook emerged last, his weathered face grave but satisfied. He surveyed the scene, then approached Kate. Project Trident is now fully activated, he informed her quietly. This was bigger than we thought. Bennett was just the tip of the iceberg. Kate nodded. How high does it go? That's what we need to find out. Westbrook handed her a secure tablet. On it was a new assignment, Operation Obsidian. You're being reassigned and effective immediately. A specialized task force operating under direct National Security Council authority. Your official cover remains signals intelligence, but your actual mission parameters are outlined here. Kate scanned the document. The mission was clear. Identify and neutralize a suspected network of high-level military and intelligence officials selling secrets to multiple foreign buyers. You'll have full operational autonomy and whatever resources you require. Westbrook looked at her steadily. You were built for this, Kate. It's why Chimera exists. Kate felt the weight of the assignment settle on her shoulders. This wasn't about medals or recognition. It was about protecting the system itself from those who would corrupt it from within. I'll need a team, she said, starting with Gunnery Sergeant Ramirez. Westbrook glanced at the Marine, who stood at a respectful distance, still vigilant despite the containment team's presence. A sniper, a professional who can keep his mouth shut and hit what he aims at. 2 qualities I value. Westbrook nodded. Approved. Who else? Kate thought of Commander Garrison, who had recognized the evidence for what it was and acted accordingly. A man who believed in the system enough to let it work. I have a few ideas. I'll forward you the list. As the prisoners were loaded onto the helicopter, Kate felt a cold certainty settle over her. This was just the beginning. Somewhere out there, powerful forces were working against American interests from within the very institutions sworn to protect them. She would find them, she would expose them, and she would ensure they faced justice. Not for recognition, not for medals, but because shadows needed to be policed by those who understood darkness. And in that realm, Major Catherine Morgan was sovereign. 3 months after the events at Fope Sentinel, a windowless conference room deep within the Pentagon hummed with subdued tension. The room, officially designated Strategic Operations Planning Center 7, was known informally as the Vault. No electronic devices were permitted inside. The air conditioning system operated on an independent circuit. The walls contained copper mesh shielding to prevent electromagnetic eavesdropping. Around a polished mahogany table sat the select members of Operation Obsidian, the counterintelligence task force assembled to identify and eliminate the network of traitors selling American military secrets. Major Catherine Morgan sat at the head of the table, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. The past 3 months had aged her in subtle ways. New lines at the corners of her eyes, a certain hardness to her mouth, the weight of command. To her right sat Colonel James Westbrook, officially her advisor, but in practice her shield against political interference. His decades of service and network of powerful allies provided the task force with both guidance and protection. Gunnery Sergeant Michael Ramirez occupied the seat to her left. The Marine sniper had traded his desert utilities for the crisp blue dress uniform required at the Pentagon, but his watchful intensity remained unchanged. On his collar gleamed the new insignia of his battlefield promotion to warrant officer, a reward for his role in the FOB Sentinel operation. Commander Thomas Garrison was present as well, his naval intelligence background proving valuable in tracking the maritime aspects of the conspiracy. Beside him sat Dr. Elizabeth Shaw, an NSA cryptanalyst who specialized in breaking the most sophisticated encryption systems. The final member of the inner circle was CIA Deputy Director Alan Chambers, a career spy master whose weathered face betrayed nothing of his thoughts. "Let's begin," Kate said, activating the secure holographic display built into the table's center. "Status reports, please." The display illuminated, showing a complex network diagram. Faces connected by glowing lines of different colors and thicknesses, representing relationships, financial transactions, and communication patterns. "We've identified 27 individuals involved in the conspiracy," Kate continued. 8 active duty military officers, 4 civilian contractors with security clearances, 3 defense intelligence agency analysts, and 12 foreign nationals acting as handlers or financiers. "And the leadership?" Chambers asked. It was the question that had haunted the investigation from the beginning. Who was the architect, the mastermind coordinating these complex betrayals? "That's where we've hit a wall," Kate admitted. "The operational security is impressive. Cell structure, limited contact between members, dead drops, cutouts. Classic espionage tradecraft executed with modern technology." She manipulated the display, highlighting 3 faces. "These 3 are our best leads to the leadership. Colonel Richard Hargrove, Pentagon Strategic Planning; Julia Winters, Senior Advisor to the Secretary of Defense; and Admiral James McKnight, Vice Chief of Naval Operations." The room fell silent. These weren't middle managers or disgruntled officers near retirement. These were power players at the highest echelons of American military leadership. "Evidence?" Westbrook asked quietly. Kate nodded to Dr. Shaw, who took control of the display. "Financial irregularities first," the cryptanalyst began. "All 3 have received substantial deposits to offshore accounts within 48 hours of major intelligence breaches. The banking pathway is complex. Shell companies, cryptocurrency conversions, multiple jurisdictions, but the pattern is consistent." She showed the financial flows, the money appearing in their accounts, like clockwork, after each confirmed breach. "Second, communication signatures. Using the encryption pattern identified from Lieutenant Colonel Harmon's transmissions at FOB Sentinel, we've detected similar encrypted bursts originating from secure facilities where these 3 had access." "Correlation isn't causation," Chambers noted, playing devil's advocate. "We need something definitive." "We have it," Kate said. She accessed a heavily encrypted section of the database, requiring 3 separate biometric authentications. A series of transcripts appeared along with audio waveforms. 2 weeks ago, we intercepted and decrypted this communication between Colonel Hargrove and an unidentified contact using the codename Conductor. It confirms Hargrove's involvement and suggests the existence of a central figure coordinating the entire operation. The transcripts detailed arrangements for the transfer of classified war plans for a potential conflict in the South China Sea with a price tag of $5 million. "Have you identified this Conductor?" Westbrook asked. Kate shook her head. "Not yet. The voice is digitally altered, the language deliberately vague. But there's something about the speech patterns, the command structure. This is someone with intimate knowledge of our systems and procedures. Someone who thinks and speaks like one of us." "Because they are one of us," Ramirez said quietly. The room absorbed the implications of his statement. "So what's our next move?" Chambers asked. "We take down Hargrove," Kate replied. "Tonight. He's scheduled to access the Strategic Command secure server at 2100 hours. We believe he intends to download additional classified materials for transfer. We intercept him in the act, flip him if possible, and use him to get to the others. The team spent the next hour refining the operational plan. Roles were assigned, contingencies developed, authorities confirmed. As the meeting concluded, Kate held Ramirez back with a subtle gesture. When the room had emptied, she spoke. Michael, I need you on Overwatch. If this goes sideways, if Hargrove is more dangerous than we anticipate, I want your eyes on the situation. Ramirez nodded. In the months since Phoebe Sentinel, they had developed the wordless understanding of combat veterans who had faced death together. Where do you want me? Maintenance access in the ceiling of Corridor B, adjacent to the server room. Limited angles, but the best available option. Rules of engagement. Kate met his gaze steadily. Protect the mission, protect the team, in that order. Ramirez understood what she wasn't saying. If Hargrove represented a threat to the operation or to their lives, Ramirez was authorized to use lethal force inside the Pentagon against a full colonel. It wasn't a decision made lightly. Copy that, ma'am. He rose to leave, then hesitated. Kate, be careful. Something about this feels wrong. It was the first time he had used her first name. The breach of protocol signaled his genuine concern. I always am, she replied, but she shared his unease. Throughout her career, Kate had developed an intuition for danger, a sixth sense that had saved her life more than once. It was whispering to her now, warning of hidden complications. As night fell over Washington, D.C., Kate prepared for the operation. In her secure apartment in Arlington, she methodically checked her equipment. The sidearm, a compact 9mm Sig Sauer, was standard for federal agents. The communication set the restraints, the credentials, all by the book. It was the items in the hidden compartment of her go-bag that spoke to her true capabilities. A ceramic blade that would defeat metal detectors. A specialized device that could clone security badges in seconds. 3 different identities with complete documentation. Tools of a shadow warrior, not an intelligence officer. She dressed in an unremarkable black pantsuit that concealed her weapon while allowing freedom of movement. Professional, forgettable, exactly what she wanted. At precisely 20:30 hours, she entered the Pentagon through the metro entrance. Her legitimate credentials and security clearance gave her access to the building even at this late hour. Numerous late-night work sessions over the past months had established a pattern of presence that wouldn't raise eyebrows. Kate moved through the labyrinthine corridors with purpose, her route carefully planned to avoid the heaviest security concentrations. The Pentagon's vastness was both challenge and asset. 6.5 million square feet, 17.5 miles of corridors, 23,000 employees. Even at night, there were enough people present that one more face didn't stand out. She reached the rendezvous point near the secure server farm and checked in with her team via encrypted comms. Overwatch in position, Ramirez confirmed. His voice was calm, professional. Surveillance has eyes on target, reported Garrison from the mobile command center parked innocuously in the Pentagon's vast parking lot. Hargrove is in his office preparing to move. ETA to server room approximately 7 minutes. Copy, Kate acknowledged. All units stand by. Remember, we want him alive and talking. Use whatever leverage necessary. She positioned herself in an alcove near the server room entrance, partially concealed by a jutting wall section. From here, she could observe without being immediately visible to someone entering the corridor. At 20:54, Garrison's voice came through her earpiece. Target on the move, approaching from the west corridor. Kate readied herself, controlling her breathing, centering her mind. The hunt was reaching its culmination. Visual confirmation, Ramirez murmured from his overhead position. Target has entered the west end of the corridor, moving your direction. Kate saw him then, Colonel Richard Hargrove, 52, decorated combat veteran, now Pentagon insider, with access to America's most sensitive military planning documents. He moved with the confident stride of a man accustomed to authority, keying his access card at the checkpoint that separated the general corridor from the high security section. She waited until he was fully committed to the restricted area before making her move. As he approached the server room door, she stepped out of the alcove, her credentials already extended. Colonel Hargrove, Major Morgan Counterintelligence. I need a moment of your time. Hargrove froze his hand halfway to the server room's biometric scanner. His reaction was telling that not the confusion or irritation of an innocent man interrupted, but the coiled tension of someone recognizing danger. This is a restricted area, Major. Whatever you need can wait until morning. I'm afraid it can't. Kate maintained her position between Hargrove and the exit route. We need to discuss Operation Obsidian and your communications with an individual known as Conductor. Hargrove's expression shifted subtly, a micro-expression of calculation crossing his features. I don't know what you're talking about. Now, if you'll excuse me. He moved as if to step around her, then suddenly lunged forward, his hand reaching inside his jacket. Kate reacted instantly, deflecting his arm with a precise strike to the nerve cluster at his elbow. His hand spasmed, dropping the small pistol he had concealed. She followed with a sweep that took his legs from under him, driving him to the floor with controlled force. Weapons in play, she reported calmly into her comm as she pinned Hargrove with a knee to his spine, securing his hands with zip ties. Target subdued. Copy, acknowledged Garrison. Extraction team, moving in. Hargrove twisted his head to glare up at her. You have no idea what you're doing, he hissed, who you're really dealing with. Why don't you enlighten me? Kate applied just enough pressure to his shoulder joint to ensure his cooperation without causing permanent damage. You think this is about money? Hargrove laughed bitterly. This is about power, about the future of American military dominance. You're interfering in matters far beyond your understanding or authority. Spare me the villain monologue, Colonel. Save it for your interrogation. You won't get the chance, Hargrove said, his voice suddenly calm. Too calm. Checkmate in 3. A chill ran through Kate. It was a code phrase, but not one they had anticipated. Overwatch status, she demanded. Ramirez's voice came back tense. Multiple heat signatures approaching from both ends of the corridor. Not our people. Extraction team report, Kate called. Silence. Garrison, come in? Nothing but static. We're being jammed, she realized. Countermeasures activated. In that moment, Kate understood. This wasn't a simple apprehension. It was a trap, and she had walked right into it. The lights in the corridor suddenly died, plunging the space into darkness, broken only by the dim emergency lighting. From both ends of the hallway came the distinctive sound of boots on tile. Multiple individuals moving with tactical precision. Kate made her decision instantly. She hauled Hargrove to his feet and whispered harshly in his ear. Who sent them? Hargrove smiled in the darkness. The conductor sends his regards. If I die, so do you, Kate promised, drawing her sidearm and positioning Hargrove as a shield. They're not here to kill you, Hargrove replied with unsettling confidence. Just to deliver a message. From the darkness, a voice called out, Major Morgan, stand down and release the colonel. This is a National Security Agency operation. You are interfering with a sanctioned intelligence gathering mission. The claim was technically plausible. The NSA had broad authorities. But Kate knew it was a lie. Operation Obsidian had been briefed to the highest levels of NSA leadership. This was something else. Identify yourself, she called back, buying time as she assessed her options. The corridor offered minimal cover. The server room required biometric access she didn't have. The ceiling access where Ramirez was positioned. Special Agent Lawrence, NSA Counterintelligence Division, the voice replied. I have authentication codes if required. Transmit them to secure channel Delta 9. Kate responded, naming a channel that didn't exist. It was a test. A legitimate NSA agent would know the proper protocols. Transmitting now, the voice responded, without hesitation. Confirmation. These were imposters. Overwatch, Kate subvocalized into her hidden secondary communication device. Exit strategy, Bravo. Prepare to cover. Ready, came Ramirez's whispered response. In one fluid motion, Kate fired 3 precisely aimed shots into the ceiling tiles where the corridor's emergency lighting fixtures were mounted. The space plunged into total darkness. Simultaneously, she drove Hargrove forward toward the false NSA team, creating momentary confusion. As they collided, she was already moving in the opposite direction, using the wall as a guide. From above, Ramirez's rifle cracked twice. Not lethal shots, but precise impacts that shattered kneecaps, neutralizing 2 of the hostiles and adding to the chaos. Kate reached the access panel she had identified during her pre-mission reconnaissance, a maintenance shaft that connected to the building's HVAC system. As she pulled it open, suppressed weapons fire erupted behind her, bullets impacting the wall where she had been moments before. She pulled herself into the narrow shaft as Ramirez provided covering fire from his position. Once inside, she activated a small, chemical light stick, illuminating the cramped space with a ghostly green glow. "Overwatch exfil to secondary rendezvous," she commanded. "Do not wait for me." "Negative," Ramirez replied. "Not leaving you." "That's an order, Warrant Officer." A pause. "Copy. Moving now." Kate navigated the maintenance shaft by memory, having studied the building's structural plans meticulously. The Pentagon, for all its security, was an old building with the typical weaknesses of aging infrastructure. Maintenance shafts, utility corridors, forgotten access points, all potential avenues for someone with the right knowledge. After 10 minutes of careful movement, she reached an electrical closet near the building's river entrance. From there, she accessed a secondary corridor used primarily by maintenance personnel. Moving with purpose, but not rushing, she made her way to the exit. Her communication device vibrated silently. A text message from Westbrook's Safe House Foxtrot. "Come alone. Trust no one." Outside, the October night was cool and clear. Kate blended with a group of late-working civilian employees exiting the building, just another government worker heading home after hours. No one gave her a second glance. She took a circuitous route to Safe House Foxtrot, an unmarked apartment in Alexandria that existed on no official records. Public transportation, 2 changes of clothing, from dead drops she had established careful counter-surveillance measures to ensure she wasn't followed. It was nearly midnight when she arrived. Ramirez was already there, as was Westbrook. Their expressions were grim. "Garrison?" she asked. "Alive," Westbrook answered. "In custody at Walter Reed. Someone hit the command vehicle with an EMP device, then a tactical team extracted him. They're claiming it was a training exercise gone wrong." "And Hargrove?" "In the wind, along with the false NSA team." Kate processed this. "So we're blown. Completely." Westbrook nodded heavily. "Operation Obsidian has been officially terminated by the Secretary of Defense himself. National security concerns, they're saying. All our files have been classified above our clearance levels." "That's impossible," Kate protested. "We have presidential authorization." Had Westbrook corrected? "Something's changed. Someone with enough influence to shut us down reached the right ears." "The conductor," Ramirez said quietly. Kate paced the small apartment, mind racing. "We need to go outside the system. Take what we know to the media." "With what proof?" Westbrook asked. "Our evidence is locked behind classifications we can no longer access. And even if we had it, who would believe accusations against the highest levels of military leadership without incontrovertible proof?" "So we get proof," Kate said, "directly from the source." "You mean the conductor?" Westbrook's voice was cautious. "We don't even know who that is. But we can find out." Kate activated a small tablet she had kept separate from official systems. "Before everything went down, I made copies. Not everything, but enough. Enough to establish a pattern." She showed them the data she had preserved. Communications, intercepts, financial transactions, operational timelines. "The conductor is someone with access to all branches of the military, someone who can move between agencies without raising flags, someone with both the technical understanding to manage this operation and the authority to protect it." She highlighted a series of dates. "And on these specific dates, when critical information was transmitted, only 3 individuals had access to all the compromised systems." The display showed 3 names: Admiral James McKnight, Vice Chief of Naval Operations; General Walter Harris, Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs Director; Samuel Phillips, Defense Intelligence Agency. "Our suspects," Kate concluded. "One of them is the conductor." "Those are 3 of the most powerful military figures in the country," Westbrook said slowly. "Each with decades of service, impeccable records, political connections. Going after them without absolute proof would be suicide." "Then we get absolute proof." Kate's voice was steel. "We track their dominance, their communications, their finances. We watch and we wait. And when one of them makes a mistake, and they will, we'll be ready." "And if they come after us first?" Ramirez asked. "They already have," Kate replied. "Tonight was their opening move. But they underestimated us. They thought we were just following orders, that we'd back down when faced with apparent authority. They don't understand what they're dealing with." "And what's that?" Westbrook asked. Kate's eyes were cold with determination. People who believe in what they're fighting for. The system can be corrupted and authority can be misused, but the oath we took to defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that remains. She looked at her small team, a veteran intelligence officer nearing retirement, a Marine sniper who had seen too much, and herself a woman trained in shadows. Not the force she would have chosen to go up against the highest echelons of American military power, but the one she had. This isn't about medals anymore, she said quietly. It's about right and wrong. Are you with me? Ramirez nodded immediately. All the way, ma'am. Westbrook considered longer, weighing the consequences. Finally, he said, I'm too old to start looking for another career anyway. Kate allowed herself a small smile. Then let's get to work. We find the conductor, we expose the network, and we end this. Whatever it takes. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in covert intelligence gathering. Operating without official sanction or resources, the small team established surveillance on their 3 primary suspects. Ramirez, using his military credentials and the cover of developing advanced sniper training programs, gained access to the movements and security details of the suspects. Westbrook leveraged his extensive network of old intelligence hands, retired analysts, former field officers, technical specialists who owed him favors from decades of service. Kate focused on the electronic trail. Using techniques that existed in the gray areas of legality, she monitored communication patterns, digital signatures, unusual network activities. The conductor was careful, but perfection was impossible in the modern connected world. Everyone left traces. Their breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elizabeth Shaw, the NSA cryptanalyst, who had been part of the original Obsidian team, contacted Kate through an encrypted channel. I'm being reassigned, Shaw reported, effective immediately, remote listening post in Alaska. But before I go, you should know, I found something in the encryption patterns we were studying, a signature. It's subtle, but it's consistent across all the communications we intercepted. What kind of signature? Kate asked. A personal one. Each cryptographer has habits, preferences in how they structure their algorithms. This one has a mathematical elegance that's distinctive. I've only seen it in one other place, where a classified white paper on next-generation military communications security, authored by Director Samuel Phillips when he was heading the DIA's Technical Measures Division. Kate felt the pieces click into place. Phillips, the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, a man with access to every military secret, connections across the intelligence community, and the technical expertise to orchestrate a sophisticated espionage operation. I need proof, Elizabeth. Concrete evidence that will stand up to scrutiny. I can't get you that, Shaw admitted, but I can tell you where to look. Phillips maintains a private server at his residence in McLean, against all security protocols. If what you're looking for exists, it's there. It was the opening they needed, a vulnerability in the conductor's armor. The operation to access Phillips's server was planned with meticulous precision. Kate would handle the technical infiltration. Ramirez would provide overwatch from a rented apartment across the street. Westbrook would coordinate from a mobile command post, ready to provide emergency extraction if needed. Phillips's residence was a colonial-style mansion set on 2 acres of manicured grounds in one of Virginia's most exclusive neighborhoods. The physical security was extensive. Perimeter sensors, motion detectors, cameras, armed guards. But like many senior officials, Phillips's digital security relied heavily on isolation rather than robust protection. His private server, while not connected to the internet, had vulnerabilities that Kate could exploit if she could get close enough. The operation was set for a night when Phillips was scheduled to attend a diplomatic function at the French embassy. A 6-hour window in the house would be occupied only by household staff and security personnel. Kate approached the target using a cover as a utility company technician, responding to a reported power fluctuation in the neighborhood. Her credentials were flawless, her equipment standard issue, her manner professional and forgettable. The security detail at the gate conducted the expected verification, checking her ID against their authorized service provider list. Kate knew the list had been subtly modified the previous day, a small digital intrusion that had added her alias to the approved contractors. Once on the ground, she moved with purpose toward the utility access point near the main house. From there, she could tap into the property's power grid, creating a brief but necessary fluctuation that would force the backup systems to engage. That momentary transition would be her window to access the server room without triggering alarms. Security detail is maintaining position at the gate, Ramirez reported through her concealed earpiece. Two guards visible on the perimeter, no movement detected inside the main house. Copy, Kate acknowledged softly as she worked. Initiating power fluctuation in 3, 2, 1. A subtle manipulation of the circuits in the property experienced a 3-second power interruption. Lights flickered, then stabilized as the backup generators engaged. In that brief window, Kate moved. Entering through a service entrance, she navigated directly to the home office where intelligence suggested the server was located. The room was locked but yielded quickly to her specialized tools. Inside, she found what she was looking for, a standalone server humming quietly in a custom-built cabinet. She connected her specialized device to the system, bypassing the security protocols, using exploits developed by NSA technicians and never shared with other agencies. "I'm in," she reported, beginning data extraction. The files were encrypted as expected, but Kate's device was programmed to copy everything for later decryption. She didn't need to read the files now, only to secure them. "Movement at the front gate," Ramirez suddenly warned. "Black SUV approaching, Phillips's security detail configuration." Kate checked the time. "He's returning early. How long?" 2 minutes, maybe less. Not enough time to complete the full extraction. Kate made a split-second decision, focusing the download on the most recently modified files, the ones most likely to contain current operational data. Adjusting parameters. "Need 90 seconds. "May not have it," Ramirez responded tensely. "SUV is through the gate, approaching the main entrance." Kate worked methodically despite the pressure, fingers flying across the specialized device. The progress bar crawled forward, 70%, 75%, 80%. From the front of the house came the sound of doors opening, voices. Phillips had returned. 85%, 90%. Footsteps in the hallway moving toward the office. 95%. Download complete. Kate disconnected her device, returning the server to its exact original state. She had seconds at most. The door to the office began to open. Kate did the unexpected. Instead of hiding, she moved toward the door, meeting Phillips as he entered. "Excuse me, sir," she said, projecting startled professionalism. "Northern Virginia Power. We had a report of electrical fluctuations in the neighborhood. Your housekeeper let me in to check the outlets in this room. All readings are normal now." Phillips, a distinguished-looking man in his early 60s, regarded her with sharp, intelligent eyes. "Did she know I wasn't aware of any electrical issues?" "Just a precautionary check, sir. Some of your neighbors reported brief outages." Kate maintained her cover persona. Competent, slightly deferential, unremarkable. Phillips studied her for a long moment. Something in his gaze suggested calculation assessment. Then he stepped aside. "Well, if you're finished—" "All done, sir. Thank you for your patience." Kate moved past him, tool bag in hand, maintaining a measured pace that had suggested neither hurry nor nervousness. As she passed, Phillips spoke again. "You know, it's interesting. I don't recall my housekeeper mentioning that she'd let in a service technician." Kate didn't break stride. "She was very helpful. Good night, sir." She felt his eyes on her back as she walked down the hallway out the front door into her service van. Only when she was a mile away did she allow herself to breathe normally again. "Package secured," she reported, returning to base. At the safe house, they began the process of decrypting and analyzing what she had recovered. The files were heavily protected, but with Shaw's insights into Phillips's encryption methods, they made steady progress. What they found exceeded their worst fears. Phillips, the conductor, had orchestrated a complex operation selling American military secrets, not just to one foreign power, but to multiple bidders, playing them against each other to maximize profits. The intelligence he had compromised included war plans, weapons capabilities, troop deployments, and counterintelligence operations. The damage was catastrophic, and it was ongoing. "We need to take this to someone with the authority to act," Westbrook said, reviewing the evidence. "Someone beyond Phillips's reach." "The president," Kate concluded. "Directly, no intermediaries." How, Ramirez asked. We can't exactly walk into the White House. No, Kate agreed, but there is one person who might help us. Someone with direct access to the president, someone I've worked with before. She meant the National Security Advisor, Dr. Eleanor Richards, a career intelligence professional who had risen through merit rather than political connection. Kate had served under her during a classified operation years earlier and had earned her trust. Contacting Richards would be risky. Any communication might be intercepted. Any meeting might be compromised. But they had run out of alternatives. Kate arranged the meeting through a series of cutouts and dead drop, old-school tradecraft that avoided digital surveillance. The rendezvous point was a quiet corner of the National Arboretum, a place where two people could speak privately amidst the ancient trees. Dr. Richards arrived alone as agreed. At 65, she moved with the vigor of someone 20 years younger, her sharp eyes missing nothing. I was surprised to hear from you, Major, Richards said without preamble, especially given that you're currently listed as AWOL and under investigation for interference with a classified NSA operation. Those charges are fabricated, Kate replied. As I believe you suspect, or you wouldn't be here. Richards's expression revealed nothing. I'm here because you said you had evidence of a significant national security breach. I assume you can substantiate that claim. Kate handed her a secure tablet containing the decrypted files. Everything is there. The who, the what, the when, the how. Director Phillips of the DIA is selling our secrets to the highest bidder. He has been for years. Richards reviewed the material with the rapid comprehension of an experienced intelligence officer. Her face grew graver with each swipe of the screen. This is, she hesitated, searching for the right word. Unprecedented. It's treason, Kate stated flatly, and it needs to stop. Richards looked up from the tablet. Why come to me? Why not go public? Because this needs to be handled surgically. Going public would trigger panic, compromise ongoing operations, potentially endanger lives. It needs to be contained and addressed from within. And you trust me to do that? I trust you to recognize the threat and act accordingly. To put country above politics or personal advancement. Richards was silent for a long moment, weighing options, calculating risks. Finally, she nodded. I'll take this directly to the president. No copies, no distribution. He'll want to speak with you. Wentbuyan, tonight, be ready. The call came 3 hours later, not from Richards, but from the presidential security detail. An unmarked vehicle would collect Kate and her team. They would be granted 15 minutes with the president in the Situation Room. It was more than they had hoped for, a direct audience without intermediaries who might dilute or distort their evidence. The meeting was brief, intense, and conclusive. The president, a former prosecutor, grasped the implications immediately and authorized immediate action. Director Phillips would be quietly apprehended. His network would be dismantled. The damage would be assessed and contained. And the three of you, the president concluded, have my gratitude and my apology. The system failed you when you were trying to protect it. That failure stops here. 2 days later, the Washington Post reported that Director Samuel Phillips of the Defense Intelligence Agency had resigned for personal reasons. No mention was made of an investigation or charges. No hint was given of the true circumstances. But in a private ceremony in the Oval Office, Kate Westbrook and Ramirez received the Intelligence Star, the highest award given for exceptional service in the intelligence community. No citation was read, no record would be kept. The medals were handed over with a simple statement: your country owes you a debt it can never publicly acknowledge. Afterward, as they stood in the Rose Garden, Kate looked at her small team. What now? Westbrook smiled wearily. For me, retirement. Finally, a cabin in Montana and no more secrets to keep. Ramirez shrugged. Back to the core. There are still good fights worth fighting. Kate nodded, understanding them both. But for her, there was a different path. A week later, she sat across from Dr. Richards in a secure office deep within the intelligence community's labyrinthine structure. We're creating a new unit, Richards explained, small elite answering directly to the National Security Council. Its mission will be to identify and neutralize threats from within, the compromised individuals, the corruption, the betrayals that traditional counterintelligence might miss or be unable to address. And you want me to join this unit, Kate surmised. I want you to lead it, Richards corrected. Your experience with Operation Obsidian, your skill set, your judgment, they're exactly what we need. Kate considered the offer. It meant more shadows, more secrets, more battles fought away from the light. But it also meant purpose, a chance to protect the system that, despite its flaws, remained worth defending. I'll need to choose my own team, she said. Richard smiled. I assumed as much. Ramirez has already expressed interest despite my warning about the paperwork involved in transferring a Marine to an intelligence unit. Kate allowed herself a small smile. He hates paperwork, but he trusts you. As do I. The next morning, Kate stood on her balcony watching the sun rise over the Potomac. The Bronze Star Medal sat on the railing before her, a reminder of where this journey had begun, with a general's contempt and a quiet woman's resolve. She thought of Bennett, now retired in disgrace, of Phillips facing justice behind closed doors, of the network they had exposed and dismantled. There would be others. There always were. People who saw their oath as a path to power rather than a commitment to service. People who believed themselves above the very system they had sworn to protect. And there would be people like her to stop them. People who understood that the real battles for America's security weren't always fought on foreign soil or with conventional weapons. Sometimes they were fought in offices, in server rooms, in encrypted communications and classified files. Shadow wars fought by shadow warriors. Kate picked up the medal, feeling its weight one last time before placing it in a small box. This chapter was ending. A new one was beginning. Project Chimera was about to be reborn.